What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got a bit of a different kind of video. I don't generally do comparisons very often, but today I'll be doing a comparison of the Chaves Ultramar Redencion Street. The two different versions, essentially, is what I'll be doing. This is the G10 titanium scale satin combo grind with a drop point. This is the same blade, drop point, same design and everything, but with a titanium scale with a micarta inlay, and PVD, I believe, is the coating they use on it. And yeah, I just wanted to compare the two, especially because this is actually a later model. This was the original model that came out, and then this one came out later. Although I do believe at the moment, these can be found and are available at certain retailers, whereas these have now gone out of stock and these are not available at the moment. I do believe they'll come back, but I'm not sure when, or when they'll be available, or when you're watching this, so I won't discuss availability or anything like that. I believe the pricing was, these were originally $275 to $300 depending on the variant, and these are in that $235 range. So you are looking at a more expensive knife here with the micarta inlay. And first things first, I want to talk about why I have two, how this became. I originally got this knife, if you guys don't follow my channel and understand. I originally got this knife. I wanted this knife when it first came out, but I didn't have the money. I couldn't afford it at the time, and it was just bad timing and everything. And I really did want the micarta inlay. When these came out, these were no longer available, and I had the money, and it was, again, it was like, $50 cheaper, almost $40 cheaper. So it was a little easier. It was a little less of a leap, closer to that $200 range, which it really isn't that big of a deal, guys. But at the moment I was ready to go. I did it, and I never looked back. I really do love this knife. And if you guys have seen my hype versus reality on this knife, you'll know how much I love it. And after I got this and used it significantly, and I mean, this thing had already been through, I had it for months. I had already sent it out to Elliot from Sharp Thinking for him to try it out. And then it had already come back. And then what happened was I had, on Instagram, I had one of my friends on Instagram give me a heads up that this guy was on sale. And shout out to Jack Farmboy, who was the one who gave me the heads up. Jack let me know that this was available. The guy was selling it. He just needed the money at the moment. He just was dropping it for just a great deal. And I was like, I can't say no to that. I just couldn't say no, because how much I love this one. And then knowing I really kind of wanted to try one of these, I just had to go for it. So I did, and I don't regret it. I really do love this knife, and I just wanted to show you guys because I thought it was really interesting, all the little idiosyncrasies that are different between the two. And it's not just the fact that we have two titanium scales with a micarta inlay here. Obviously, this knife's going to be slightly heavier than the G10. This one has pretty much a solid G10 side and then a titanium side. This isn't like lined or anything. This doesn't have any milling, but you have a solid G10 side and then a titanium lock side. So I really was curious. I was super happy with the way this looked. I really love the micarta inlay. I did, before I even got this knife, actually a long time ago, I saw a review from another great YouTube channel and friend on here, Mason over at Daddio EDC. I saw his review of this knife, and it actually made me kind of like question whether I want one. And I'm actually glad that I really didn't see his video before getting this knife, because I'm going to get to that as I go here and as you see the differences between these two knives. So first things first, when I got this knife, I really did love the satin grind. The fact that there's no coating on this, I actually liked that a lot. When they first came out, they only had coated blades. and I've gotten away from coated blades, although I used to like them. In the last like 2 years, I've really just gone away from coated blades because of the wear shown, you know. A lot of times satin or stone wash blades just don't show as much wear, and they just make the knife look newer throughout its life. So it's not really that big of a deal because you guys know all my knives are pretty much users, but that's also why this is nice, because it keeps them not looking as used for longer. Helps the resale value as well, but not that I resell all of my knives or a lot of them anyways. But anyways, so I did like the satin grind. I love even with the wear factor, I really just love the way this looks. Because of that reflective finish, it's got like almost like you can see the grind lines, and you could probably feel them. Yeah, you could feel them with your nail, but they do like a polish on the end of it, and they do leave it somewhat satin, so it's not like super polished, but yeah, it's got that awesome reflective bounce off of the different contours of this blade because of the compound grind. You have a flat grind up here with a hollow grind here, which articulates that line right there where your hollow grind ends. And it's just beautiful, guys. You can see you have vertical satin lines here and on the swedge. Then you have your diagonal satin lines here. And then you have your horizontal satin lines on the flats. So just a beautiful touch as far as seeing the reflective dance here. But I really love that. And when I got the coated blade, I was kind of like missing a little bit of that. Although I will say that the coating they do on these Chavez knives, these are made by Reate, guys. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that. These are Chavez. Ramon Chavez is a custom knife maker, and he went to Reate to have them make his production line. And really nice choice with Reate. They do an excellent job with their heat treat, from what we can tell, from what we've seen in the HRC testing and cut testing, guys. The cut testing that correlates to seeing what the HRCs are. And in use, guys, I have noticed that this knife and this knife have performed very well. And this one on the factory grind, both of the factory grinds actually performed really well, and I had a nice stable edge right from the factory, which could be due to the fact that in the past Reate's published and had a article written about how they were using cooling in their factory grinds to help prevent burnt or fatigued edges from the factory. And it was definitely noticed. Obviously, these have both been sharpened by me at this point. They've both been sharpened, and they both had really good factory edges. So I was happy with the factory edge, and really happy with the way these both sharpened. As you can see, they both have this smile at the base, which I will probably fix, especially on this one, because I don't have a coating to contend with. But I will extend this plunge grind to eliminate that smile and help with subsequent sharpenings. But you can see they both have it. I've heard some people go, oh, mine doesn't have it. Most people say, yeah, mine has that as well. There's like a flat spot at the back of the heel here. And Reate's actually kind of infamous for that. I don't want to make a blanket statement, but I've seen it on a lot of their knives. I don't know if it happens on all of them. I don't want to say all, but it happens on a lot. So we did notice it in these two examples, which are at two different times. And one of the things I do want to mention, like right off, is this coating was done very well, and Reate does an excellent job with this coating. It's like a stonewash PVD coating. I believe it's PVD. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. But this PVD coating's done excellently. And they do almost like a polish, but it makes it more slick. It doesn't have that grippy feel of some coatings. And it really does cut through, and it doesn't seem to hang up on materials, and it also doesn't seem to show much wear. You see a little bit, few scratches right there. And that's because most of the time I'm cutting cardboard, I do live near the ocean, so there's sometimes sand in the tape on the cardboard. There's there's so many factors, guys, in cardboard cutting, and when you have adhesives and stuff like that involved, you never know what's going to stick to the adhesive. I try to remove a lot of adhesive from the boxes, but I don't always have time, so it does happen. But in saying that, this coating does hold up very well. This little line you're seeing here is probably from where I wiped the edge to do stropping after a day. That's probably just because this got touched with oil and this didn't or something, but that's not actual wear on the coating. I could probably get rid of that with some oil, some cleaner. But yeah, really was happy to get this guy and use it. And first, right off the bat, I started noticing differences. And I want to point these out because I believe this is somewhat CQI. Excuse me, guys. Now, CQI is not necessarily the term I should use because CQI is the term that Spyderco uses. It's constant quality improvement. And I see it right here in these models. And the reason I say that, I mentioned Daddio EDC and his review of this knife here. In his review, he talks about the clip, okay? It was something that kind of blew my mind because when I saw his review, he talks about how the clip's really pointy and that it bothered him in use, that the clip was jabbing into his hand. It also caught on things in his pocket. He said it had really tight retention, which you see that? Very tight retention. Makes it a little harder getting in and out of the pocket. This point is kind of dangerous in that sense. Like if you hit something, it's going to do some damage. Yeah, it's not exactly ideal in that sense. But I did notice it, like right when I got it, because I didn't on that knife really. I hadn't noticed it before, and I'm like, what is he talking about? And when I used this knife, I actually started to notice that starting to bother me. And when I did, I kind of turned it around, and I'm like, wait, that looks different. That looked different than mine. And I could have swore, I'm like, there's something different. I didn't have this knife back at the moment, and when I did, yeah, guys, there's a significant difference there. And that's why when I saw his video, I was like, I don't see that. And the reason being is because they must have started with this one and people were complaining about how sharp that point was and decided to round it over. And that's excellent, guys. I noted attention to detail by Ramon or Reate or whoever decided to make that adjustment. It was a very, very smart thing to do because I never even noticed that. And when he said that the clip was uncomfortable, I was like, what? My clip is not uncomfortable. And honestly, guys, don't get me wrong. There are things that bother me that don't bother other people, and there are things that don't bother me that bother other people. This is always the case, and that's why I always talk about subjectivity and objectivity here, because in the end, this is my hand, and that's why we start to realize what we like. You know what I mean? People that watch my channel, they understand what I like, how I like to articulate things, how I like to talk about them. So you start to become like acquainted with my style and what I like and what fits my hand and what fits yours and where we intertwine and where we don't. So that's just the way it is. Just like me and my friends, like Gerald at Outpost 76, Ryan at Banner 24/7. Sometimes we find things that we're like, or Steve or Clint or any of these guys. When we're passing knives back and forth and sharing and giving, and getting, we all find these little idiosyncrasies of what we like and what we don't like, and where our interests, combine and where they don't, where they conflict. So it's really interesting, and I love that about knives, about what we do. So the other thing to note is that look at that retention. It's a lot less stiff. So they must have done something in order to loosen this up, whether it was to remove material or, maybe soften the titanium here. I don't know how they went about it, but this one definitely has more retention than this one. This one's much easier. Very easy going in and out of the pocket. That's why I was so dumbfounded when I saw Mason's video. Also, he does mention the fact that these are not flush and that this is not flush. That is something I did notice. Although, to me, it really didn't bother me as much as it seemed like it bothered him, like it was an unfinished thing. I do feel like it looks like that's what it was meant to be. It doesn't bother me that much. And if it did, I could always recess these a little more. Although this is a very thin piece of micarta. So, one nice thing about this micarta one is you don't have screws. As you can see, your screws are underneath the micarta. But that also adds an element of removal and another step when you're doing disassembly. So, something to consider. In my two examples, this example is very smooth, amazing deployment. That detent is dialed in very nicely. However you want to deploy it, even just pushing the, because I always say you can either get your fingernail behind. Sorry about the noise in the background, guys. Or you can push. And when you push, that really shows a good detent because you're not as much loading up. It's more about just pushing it through. And it really shows a good detent when you can do that. And this is excellent. Dialed in nicely. It's not necessarily a drop shut type of action. It does want to go. It's a pretty light shake shut, guys. Yeah, it kind of wants to go, but you do have to give it just that little bit of shake, okay? That's this action. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the coating. I did take this apart, cleaned it up, and it does seem like there's a nice race starting in the coating, like where it seems like the bearings have worn a nice line. There is no removal of the coating where the bearings go, so it could have something to do with the action not being quite as amazing as this guy. As you guys have seen in my past videos, this guy is, yeah. There's no coaxing there, guys. This thing wants to fall free. But in saying that, that's a preference, whether you like a free dropping knife, or not. You might actually like this one over this. You might actually like the non-free dropping. I know, like Ryan at Banner 24/7, he doesn't like when they're like super drop shutty. So having something where you just kind of light shake shut, or like even just you could just solid swing it in too. Once you get used to it, it's just a really easy like swing in. So both are very enjoyable. I actually don't like one better than the other necessarily, although this one is just that little bit of, if I want to, I can just sit there and watch it shut. I really do enjoy it, both of them. In saying that, this one has a little bit stronger detent, slightly stronger. And the way I notice it even more is when I'm trying to roll this one out. You guys saw in my video I had a really hard time rolling this one out. Although I got the muscle memory to be able to open this one by not getting my fingers on the lock bar. But with this one, it's a lot less critical. See that? This detent is not as strong because I can keep my hands on that bar and I can still open it. On this one, I couldn't touch it at all. If I'm even barely touching it, it makes it really tough to open. Although, see that? I'm not touching it hard or anything. Makes it really difficult. Whereas this one, I can still just release it easily just by not putting a lot of pressure here. This one, I can't have any pressure. So those are the difference in the detents. Very similar, but not a big deal. Not a make it or break it moment for me, guys, but I know some guys are super critical on the detents, especially with thumb stud knives over like a flipper. You know, flippers, a really tough detent makes no difference. It actually makes it fly out a lot more with more authority, which some guys don't like either, but yeah. So I do want to show the weight differences. This guy's 4.8. This guy's 5.68. Almost an ounce, guys. And I think this is where I kind of start to lean. I start to lean towards the G10 version ever so slightly, just because I prefer. I mean, this is a user, guys. I understand this one's more of a kind of a collection piece. I feel like with that micarta. I mean, they're both really nice pieces, and if you're collecting, I think they're both great options. But as a user, I kind of lean this way, and I really do like how light it feels in my hand. I know that a lot of guys don't care about balance, but this one has a great balance. If I'm going to be handling it or handing it to someone, or I do find that this one handles a lot better in that sense. This one's great, don't get me wrong. It does have a good balance as well. But you can see it's very handle heavy. It's just a little bit further back. Although it's not that big of a deal, guys. I'm really just splitting hairs here. No pun intended, really. But yeah, it's really, really enjoyable as well. And I find myself sitting on the couch playing with this one just as much. There is an element of this one feeling more solid in your hand, for sure. A little more handle heavy is not always a bad thing when you're using for a long time, although that point becomes an issue. Yeah, otherwise I really enjoyed this. The jimping on here doesn't really bother me like it did Mason. As far as like hard use, when I'm like pushing through something, getting a lot of resistance, I don't notice as much the jimping bothering me. I noticed he mentioned that, so I did want to touch on that quickly because I don't know if I talked about that in my hype versus reality. That did not bother me though. I really enjoy the way they did the jimping. Both great knives, guys, and if you're like into the micarta titanium and you're not really worried about weight, this is an awesome option, and they're beautiful, guys. If you're worried about weight and it's going to be a user and you really just want to get like, you know, high speed, low drag, and just you know, no coating and just simple, this is excellent, guys, and I would suggest going this route over this route if those are things that you concern yourself with. So things to consider. I do believe that if you get this now, it's probably going to have that done to it. I don't believe this is a variation thing. I think this is a quality improvement thing. I think they changed that. In saying that, this knife, guys, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but what's going to actually happen to it is it's going to get a little bit of a makeover, okay? I'm going to make this knife, for one, what it should be. What they've done in the next version is I'm going to round that over. I'm going to eliminate that point, okay? Just like it's done here. And then I'm going to have a spot where the titanium's a different color. So, in turn, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to anodize this clip, and I'm going to anodize this backspacer. I'm probably also going to heat anodize the thumb stud to match everything else, to match the backspacer, you know, I want to kind of match it to the micarta in a sense, and just give it a little bit of flair, which isn't always my jam, but I feel like on this one it would look really good. So I'm going to go for it and make it a little bit more functional with the clip wise, and then make it a little more flair as far as color and fit and finish, you know, finish goes. Yeah. So yeah, really stoked to try that, and I hope this video does you guys some good, and you get some value out of this, and maybe it'll help you make a decision between the two knives. I don't think you can make a bad decision here, but there's definitely a solid difference where I feel like if you lean a certain way, it would help you make that decision. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I think this guy's gonna go off to his Uncle Ryan soon, or either one of them's going to, so let him get a handle on him. Have a great day, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.